Bolavinaka, and welcome to Speak Your Mind, another segment of Speak Your Mind today. Now, on the 25th of November, we commemorated the International Day of Elimination of Violence Against Women. Now, this also saw the 16 days of activism being highlighted, and all for the build-up to tomorrow, which is, of course, Human Rights Day. Now, today is significant for the Fiji Women's Crisis Center, because at 10 a.m. they'll be launching the survey or the study, which is the National Research on Women's Health and also the life experience in Fiji, done in 2010 and 2011. Now, this is a survey exploring the prevalence of and incidents and attitudes to intimate partner violence in Fiji. Now, with us in studio, we have Miss Shamima Ali of the Women's Crisis Center. Good morning, Miss Shamima, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, and thank you.
All right. Well, tell us more about this survey. Big day. It's been a long-awaited day, I'm sure, and you're finally launching that. So tell us a little bit more about the survey.
Well, the first survey that we did was in 1997, and we did not quite use the WHO methodology, but still it showed quite shocking results at that time in 1997, still showed over 60%, about 68%. So we decided to do one now in 2010 in cooperation with the Fiji Bureau of Statistics. We used the WHO, World Health Organization methodology, which is being used globally and is accepted globally.
Right.
And just adapting it to our needs in Fiji, some of the questions, and how one asks the questions and so on. Over 3,000 women were surveyed all over all the provinces of Fiji.
Right.
So, you know, it's quite difficult to get everywhere. The survey took a long time. It took us, over nearly 2 years, almost 18 months to complete.
Wow.
And then, of course, being the Fiji Women's Crisis Center, we wanted it to be right, the analysis and so on, and a gender analysis, and not a clinical academic, paper documentation. So we had very good consultants. And people that we have worked with over the years. And of course, Edwina Kotoisuva, the former deputy coordinator, she led the whole thing, coordinated it, and was the main brains behind it all, and so on. And so we did that. And the results are now we've got a very sound gender analysis, we've got recommendations, and so on. And it is still quite shocking. Many years down the line,
I'm
it is
sure.
still quite shocking. Yeah.
I'm sure. Well, the numbers that you have so far, like says here, over 3,000 women, and 3,035 women have never had a partner. And of course, in 158 did not ever have a partner. Now, the team that went out to do the survey, how many were they in number, overall?
Overall, we had about 40 people, both from Bureau of Stats, their field workers, and our Fiji Women's Crisis Center staff and volunteers. So quite a few of them, and they were sort of deployed all over Fiji.
Wow, that took over, 18 months? So there was first the outreach, and then there was the compilation, and then the, coming up with the numbers?
Yes, coming up with the numbers, and then, analyzing, and then coming up with the recommendations of how to move forward.
Yes. Now, it says here that the rates of emotional and physical and also sexual violence against women by husbands, partners are higher in rural areas than in urban areas. Now, why do you think this is so? Were they able to gauge of reasons why?
Well, we can say all kinds of things about it, but what this survey has done, it has actually again showed us that whatever the clients who come into the Fiji Women's Crisis Center and our branches in the Rakiraki, Mba, Nandi, and Lambasa, we could have done an analysis from just the clients who come to us. But we needed to do this because this is a lot more acceptable, particularly to people who, in authority and so on. So we could have told people that this was happening. There was a lot of emotional abuse. It also is, because when women live in urban areas, they have places they can go to.
That's right.
And so they can escape sometimes. Not all the time, but sometimes they can escape that. But women in the rural areas do not have that kind of support systems. We are now developing support systems, but, over the years, they really haven't. There are also issue of access to services and so on. Women who are physically abused and sexually abused, these things are often accompanied by emotional abuse, so you also suffer emotional trauma and things like that. But so there is a lot more time, a lot more access to the women for the men to exercise that kind of control, coercive control that results in women being emotionally disturbed and traumatized and so on. So I think those are some of the reasons that we can say why women, more women in the rural areas are more emotionally abused.
That's right. Now, you mentioned about men as well, the advocacy for men. Has that been also included in the survey that was produced?
No, we did not include that. I mean, that's a whole new, whole separate ball game, that one there. So,
Right.
Talking to men and so on. And, we are setting up a regional training institute on gender, violence against women and human rights. And little bits of surveys, research will be done. It will be a research center also and a publishing center. So, we're hoping that we will be doing this kind of surveys with men also about their violence against women and why their attitudes, towards women and girls, and to find out why is it that we have such high rates.
That's so true. Tell us a bit more about the statistics that you've come up with in regards to the survey.
Well, over 60% of women, and wherever globally these surveys have done using the WHO methodology, we actually rank fourth.
Wow.
In about 25 countries that this has been done. So
fourth.
Pretty high.
It's
and Kiribati is before us.
Oh my goodness.
And I think Peru and Ethiopia are them and Kiribati and then us, and we squashed between Solomons and Kiribati. So quite high rates in the Pacific, which is really quite bad. This is intimate partner violence. So it's not just husband and wife. It's people living together in any kind of an intimate relationship, boyfriend, girlfriends, women who have been beaten up. So they're with a particular man and so on. And also it shows that very few women access services or seek help or tell anyone about it. And that to us is quite shocking, because we've been around for 29 years and we're thinking that so many women come and see us. About an average 1,000 women a year access our services.
Right.
So we're thinking that, we're doing pretty well, but actually less than 5% of women seek help from shelters and organizations like ours, and then also police and welfare services, or even tell a family member about it. So that we have to bring about some improvement there. We have to create an environment and improve our services so women come out and are able to access those services. Otherwise, it's about, the survey actually is called Somebody's Life, Everybody's Business, So, and it's about somebody's life. You can either lose limbs, you can be dead, you can kill somebody, commit infanticide, all kinds of things.
Okay. Well, we'll be talking more about this, but stay with us. If you just joined us, you're on Speak Your Mind. We're heading to a break. We'll be back with more. Welcome back to Speak Your Mind. Yes, the 9th of December. And we were also talking to Ms. Shamima Ali of the Women's Crisis Center on the National Research on Women's Health and Life Experiences Survey. And, of course, this is exploring the prevalence, incidents and attitudes to intimate partner violence in Fiji. Now, Ms. Ali, before that, we were talking about the attitudes of women and how some of them have become, victims of violence. And interestingly, you said because some of the mentality of some of the women.
The thinking, the way we are brought up.
Exactly.
It's a genderization, we call it, whereby, girls and boys are brought up differently. Girls are told to do certain things and not to do many things. Where boys, the whole world is out there. The world's your oyster, go and get it, kind of thing. And so girls are always told, don't do this, don't do that, do all the work. And if you look at women, they do so much work. They keep working. They're supposed to be obedient to everybody, particularly the male members of the family, and not to ask questions. And this is how many women in this country are brought up,
That's right.
And unfortunately, and boys are brought up to expect women doing these things for them, obeying them, washing, cooking, cleaning, all kinds of things for them, even serving their food, taking the plates away, So they get used to that. And that's where those attitudes set in. So if a woman refuses to do that or doesn't behave according to the norms set out by society, then that woman needs to be punished. And so we internalize these things. Right. And so when a man, when we are in a relationship with a man, and then we bring in how we saw our mom and dad behaving, what was mom's attitude towards dad and how did dad behave towards her, and particularly in very authoritarian families where he is the head of the household, as the Bible says. Right. But of course there are conditions attached to it. So the girl brings, we bring that into our relationship, and the boy brings it what he has learned. And therefore it becomes quite difficult, and she just falls into that thing of obeying. He starts telling her, your skirt is too short, don't wear your hair like that, don't look here and there, wear some sleeves, and don't wear pants, and don't do this. And she continues obeying it, and that is coercive control. And that is where those kind of people, those relationships are at high risk of being an abusive relationship. And so women accept it a lot, and that is why they don't come out. And when they are abused, they believe that it is their fault, and they keep excusing the partner's violence, and they don't tell anyone about it because other people will say, what did you do? You must have invited it in some way. They say that about rape, they say that about domestic violence, and so on. So that's why women keep quiet about it and try to cope as well as they can. And often they can't. And that is why so much emotional abuse goes on, emotional trauma and so on. So that is the reason why, because we internalize how we are brought up. And to bring about any changes and to decrease, we have to change that attitude, those attitudes in our family, in our communities, in our society.
That's so true. Now, you also, the fact that, like you said, it's the behavior that we, from our parents to us, and trying to stop that is very much a challenge. Now, with the survey part, what it says here that some of the ladies, or 60% of women, answered that it is right for women to obey. Well, how was the survey conducted? Were there questionnaires or were there one-on-one interviews?
Yeah, there were one-on-one interviews, and the questionnaire was huge. It is quite huge. We had to be allowed into the homes, and fortunately, because the center has been around for so long, people were quite welcoming. Right. There's also the danger if the husband is around, so you have that danger. If he's around, and, there were husbands who were talking, who were making noises outside and so on. And there were, of course, those men who just left women alone to do their thing. Right. And but there were others. So there was also that risk to the woman also. And but women were quite forthcoming. Which was really good, and particularly the field workers were all trained. They were well trained. Our crisis center women who were part of the survey, who did the survey, who took around the questionnaire, they already are. It's entrenched in them. The whole thing about violence against women, the sensitivity to it, how to ask the questions, and things like that. The other ones, the ones who came from the Bureau of Stats, we had to train them. So they were, trained, and then we also had to have counseling available for them, daily debriefing, because some women would tell stories that were quite traumatic. So if you're not in the field, it can be very traumatic for the field workers also. So when you do a survey of this nature, you have to take those things into account. Regular debriefs. So we ensured that there was a counselor all the time available for them. So when they came back in the evenings, that was it was available. The risk factor you have to look at if some men got together and didn't like it, particularly in the rural areas. So you had to do all those things. So, it's quite a long questionnaire, and we really acknowledge the families, the women who let us in and spend the time to do that, because it doesn't help them only, it helps the women in this country.
That's so true. Now, a very lengthy process, having to go out to the different parts of the country and receive this information. Now, were there obstacles? Were there a lot of obstacles in the way of the survey process, or was it? Well, like you said, there were a bit of issues that they had to try and refrain from. But what were some of the obstacles that the field workers had to face?
Well, things like being away from home for a long time, right? And dealing with listening to people's stories, but sometimes transport, the weather, all those things have to be taken into account. Fiji's weather is very, very unpredictable. So really, those were the obstacles. And the fact that the places are so far, the inaccessibility, that it took longer to travel and travel back and, things like that. So those were the things that we had to negotiate and navigate, actually.
With the survey and the field workers going on field, like you said, they were trained, and also during these times, were some of the women also counseled during the survey, or was it just basically to compile or get information?
The people who did the interviews, the field workers, they took with them a little card,
right,
giving the numbers, the 24-hour lines of the crisis center, and so on. Listened to them because they were already sensitized, and some of them, of course, ended up doing a bit of counseling and referral work, which was part of the training. But those cards helped because those cards enable those women to give us a call and receive counseling and ongoing counseling, and we did receive from quite a few of them.
All right, and we'll be talking about that even more. So stay with us. You're on Speak Your Mind. We're heading into a break. Welcome back to Speak Your Mind, and with us in studio once again is the Fiji Women's Crisis Center Coordinator, Ms. Shamima Ali, and we're talking more about the survey that was just compiled and will be launched at around 10 a.m. this morning. Now, Ms. Shamima, tell us, like you said, the survey took about over 18 months. The outreach itself, how long did that take the team? The outreach, going out to the areas, and also in the one-on-one interviews with the ladies that took part?
The one-on-one interviews could take anything from about 1 to 3 hours. We had also translated it into the vernacular.
Okay.
So, people were trained to also do it in the vernacular. Those people who are not comfortable with the English, they did it in the vernacular. So we wanted to be quite thorough.
Right.
So each interview would take a long, long time because it's quite a few pages. But, and people would go and stay in an area for 3 to 4 weeks to be able to go out. So we had to have a good driver and who drove them around and things like that. So it's quite it depends on how good you want to make a survey. And we wanted to make it really, really good. So you had to spend time. And then, of course, you need some time out a bit. Sometimes accommodation used to be a problem, but, we also acknowledge and thank all the families who took people in and arranged for accommodation and were very hospitable. So those things do take time.
Wow, I can imagine. And, 18 months is quite a long time. Okay, just talking on some of the numbers that we have. Like you said, Fiji is the 4th straight after Kiribati. And almost all of the women living with partner violence have never told anyone about the violence. Now, why do you think this is so? Apart from the whole submissive women being part of one of the reasons, but why do you think some of them are one of the reasons?
Well, there's a lot of shame, and women also. Many of the women don't have anywhere to go. So, violence against women just doesn't happen like that. It's because of gender inequalities.
Right.
It was a lot of our women are denied access to education, get married very quickly. And then also employment. Therefore, they cannot be in paid employment. So they end up with a guy and totally with a guy and are totally dependent on him, financially and otherwise, and emotionally also. This is the husband. I love my husband. Doesn't want any harm to come to the husband. The woman actually just wants the violence to stop, and doesn't want to leave. So she doesn't tell anyone about it. And this is also why they do not go to law enforcement, the police, because they'll tell the police, look, I want you to warn him, but don't charge him, because she doesn't want him to go to prison. That's her husband, the father of her children. The other thing is also the children. Women don't, they'll say the children won't have a father, what will happen to them, and things like that, So, and then also, the breadwinner argument. For other crimes, we don't say who will feed the family. But when it comes to a man abusing his wife and children, his partner and his children, then we talk about the breadwinner argument, who will feed the children. Exactly. So she's also, all those things are going through in her head. And, as I said before, the shame, I will be blamed for it. He will leave me. All those fears are there. And then also, like the lack of access to services, the survey does show that we have high rates in the Eastern Division. and these are mostly the maritime areas and so on. So it's quite high around there. And when we look for reasons why, it's inaccessibility of services. On an island, you might have 2 police officers, and how do they get around the island?
Right.
And if there is a call, then there is also this whole conspiracy of silence. Keep it in the village, keep it in the in the community. Don't let it out. So all that pressure is around. So they don't, and a lot of women internalize it, as I said before.
Yes.
So there's all these things working, and there will be pressure from the community for her not to seek help outside. So that is why she keeps quiet about it and endures the violence.
Right. With the survey, has this even given you an outlook into maybe creating more centers around the country? Has that inspired or challenged the Women's Crisis Center to maybe come up with more centers?
Well, definitely we are looking at that, but the plans that are underway for the next 2 years is setting up 3 shelters for women, and one in Lambasa for Vanua Levu, one in the west for Ba, and one in Suva. The one in Suva is going to be for survivors of girl survivors of sexual abuse, so they have an exit strategy and not left out after 17 to fend for themselves, because we've had dire consequences when that has happened. So we want to have that. So those shelters are, those are things that we are looking at, but they have to be also, of ethical standards and a model for Fiji and the Pacific. So those are things we're doing. Definitely we have been looking at Savu Savu for a while and Taviuni for a while, and but we also have mobile counseling. So our counselors actually go and base the Ba ones will go to Tavua, Nandi will go to Singatoka, base themselves there for a couple of days for counseling services accessing, so women can access. But what we are concentrating, and we will a lot more, is our community awareness. And we'll be a lot more proactive. At this point in time, we go by invitation, but now we are going to be a lot more proactive and really sell the program so that we can get into these remote areas. And that means, of course, transportation costs and how willing are people to let us into the communities.
Right.
So what is good is that the crisis center at the moment is overwhelmed. Like a team is going tomorrow to Nandrau in Nandarivatu for 3 days,
Yes.
And another team has come back last week from Nangali village in Naitasiri, where about 50 women gathered. So we've been having requests. Some we have to turn down and have told them next year. So at least we have that. But what we need to do is get into the interior places of Viti Levu and Vanua Levu, and also target the maritime areas. We really have to do that, and that's going to be our plan for the next 10 years.
What training programs have you put in place as well for some of the women when you go out into the communities?
Well, we have the women, the awareness. That's 3 days.
Yeah, 3 days.
And of course, the traditional leaders, they have to be, on to this, and they are the ones who let us in, and we have to follow protocol through the provincial councils and so on. So we go in, we do awareness. We do awareness on gender awareness, we do on sexual assault, domestic violence, and there are lots of stories. So when we hear all there, so it's a sharing of experiences, and we're also telling them what the laws are, what are the services available, and so on, and looking at the dynamics of it. And and it's about human rights, how that it's your basic human right not to be tortured in this way. And they recognize it. Women recognize there's just a huge silence over it. They do recognize, and they, and depending on how we teach it, and our community educators are, I think, the best in this country.
Right.
They're very well trained, and they're assessed regularly.
Yes.
So, and the new information is fed them. They know the decrees, domestic violence decree, the crimes decree. They undergo legal literacy training, and so on. So they're able to do that, and that's how we get women coming out. But also what we do is, because everyone is on board, we go back the next time, and they will say, what about the men? So we say, okay, the next one is the men. The women first, they have to know what their rights are, and then the men, and then the men, and then we get them together. And that's how the networks form. So the Turangani Koro, the police of that area, the health person in that area, the women's group, they all come together as a support network. There are contacts in those areas, but also they will then do referrals and immediate counseling.
All right. Well, we'll be talking some more on this, especially on the men topic. But of course, we'll have more to come. You're on Speak Your Mind. We're heading into a break. Welcome back to Speak Your Mind. And once again, we're joined in studio by the Women's Crisis Center Coordinator, Ms. Shamima Ali. And to those of you who've just joined us, if you have any questions in regards to the survey or in regards to the Fiji Women's Crisis Center, do feel free to call us up, 3220-906 or 907. Now, Ms. Ali, once again, we were talking about the training programs that you had put in place and having to go through protocol and also go through the different departments. Now, compared to a few years, like maybe 6 years ago, has things improved? Has the response been a bit more positive from the different authorities?
Actually, the crisis center is nearly 30 years old. So
Right.
the credibility has built because we've said the same things over and over again for
Yes.
nearly 30 years. So, you can't get away from it. I'm sure if you go in your archives, you'll find we've been saying the same thing. So, that credibility has built. And we actually, someone referred to our counselor advocates as a dog with a bone, and once they
Right.
get onto a case, they do not
They will,
leave it till they
exactly.
reach the end of it, and until the woman says, okay, enough, I'm
Yes.
okay to go on my own. So they're
Right.
like that. So that's how tenacious we are in protecting and promoting women's and girls' rights.
Right.
And children, of course, are included in that. So, so we have built up the credibility. In fact, governments work, it's successive. Government work quite well with us. We're also
Yes.
critique of government all the
Yes,
time.
yes.
We're the watchdog. What are they doing with the women, with human rights, and so on. So, but we work well. We engage quite well, and we have contributed a lot. So, the credibility has grown, and over the last 10 years, and particularly I'd say, over the last
10 years.
5 to 6 years, we are just overwhelmed with the requests for us to get into the community, because people are realizing there's a lot of awareness now. The police are doing awareness. The government, the Ministry for Women, is doing a lot of stuff around violence, elimination of violence against women. So, and that is what we are paid to do. Our funding allows, a lot of the funding goes in community awareness, because to bring about attitudinal changes, we have to change attitudes and the
Exactly.
mindset and the thinking of both men and women. So we have that, and we would have in our program 10 a year of these. We end up doing about 100 workshops throughout Fiji
Wow.
a year, all over, whether it's 3 days, 1 day, 4 days, whatever, sometimes an hour, 2 hours, so that is a lot of acceptance. And we also did we do the male advocacy for promoting and protecting women's human rights.
Right.
And this is something we coined, the Fiji Women's Crisis Center, with our Pacific Women's Network Against Violence Against Women. And now everybody's using it. It's seen as a best practice model, whereby we identify first influential men. And these are our traditional leaders, our priests, our police officers, our policy makers, youth leaders, and so on. We get them on board, and we take them through a 1-week program of gender and all this, and realizing, and so realizing just how bad it is for women, the gender inequalities. And this
Right.
is the cause, not because women are not behaving or a man is drunk all the time, and therefore, no, it's about
Gender
gender
inequality.
inequalities, and the discrimination against girls from a very small age till the time they're adults, and continues into life. So these men are, and that is how we have access into the villages, because quite a few Turangani Koros have been part of this program,
Yes.
and provincial officers and so on. So, that has been quite a good strategy.
That's true.
And men, once they start hearing what are we talking about, we are not teaching women to hate men. We are teaching women about their rights, because men, through our workshops, also learn about their rights as human beings,
Right,
their socioeconomic rights, and they start realizing what are human rights. So it
Yes.
helps them also.
Yes.
We've actually brought the women's movement in this country, particularly women's rights movement, the Human Crisis Center. We've brought the human rights discourse right out into the open, because our slogan is women's rights are human rights. From there, everyone is talking about human rights. So, so we had to do that with the men, and there are quite a few very good men who are great supporters, and also our voices out there within the communities they are in. So, we do that. We also do work for sometimes government, police training, all those things. There are requests from various other agencies and corporate agencies for us to do sexual harassment training, help them in developing sexual harassment policies and so on. I've given a few talks here too. So I have to find out whether you've got a sexual harassment policy or not. Yeah, so those things, that we are doing. We're always busy. And the good thing is that we do it in the vernacular also, in Hindustani, and also in Hindi, and also in Itoke language. Yeah.
Has it been a challenge though, trying to change the mentality of some of our leaders, or has it been constant?
No, it's a very slow process. If you look at it globally, global research shows this is it's intergenerational.
Yes.
And so it's a very slow process, and any kind of changes we will see for the better is very incremental, step by step. I don't think in my lifetime I'm going to see a huge change or decrease in the incidence of violence. But what I am seeing, and I've worked at the Crisis Center for 28 years, what I have seen is the changing attitudes within organizations, the faith-based organizations, the very traditional groups, women's groups or men's groups, the provincial councils and so on. So I've seen those changes come about, and many more people taking on the issue, whichever way, but with very good intentions, they're taking it, and that is the change that we should celebrate.
Exactly. Has there been follow-up programs to find out if, a few months back, I saw a Itoke village holding up a banner saying that they support they've been part of the program of violence against women, and they also are trying to be supportive of this, especially with the men as well. Has there been follow-up programs to go back into the community and see whether it's been consistent or whether they've been living up to the standard?
Yes, that's what we have done, because we used to do it on request, or now when we go, we'll say we're coming back next year.
Right.
So in our plans, we go back and see what is the impact. We take around a questionnaire and ask them how has it impacted on them, has anything improved or not, and we keep in touch with the women there. So the women who are our contacts there,
Right.
so they also inform us what is happening. And they might say, okay, I think you better come back in here. This is the area we need a lot more information on, or some awareness on. So that's how we'll do it, because it's no point in just doing a one-off is not going to change.
Exactly.
You have to continue that. We also identify sort of people who can take leadership, who have those abilities, and bring them back to Suva for our 4-week training that we run every year for twice a year in May and October. So they also become part of that. The men we identify, they become part of the male advocacy program, which goes in 3-4 stages. So they become part of that. So, there are people who don't have to look at us all the time. They can do this work in their own areas.
Nice.
And that is the whole objective, that more people take up the issue and they become, they themselves take responsibility.
That's so true. With the program on men. Now, I remember I was doing an interview with UN Women during the International Day of Elimination Against Women, and a friend of mine was actually watching, and he said, there's so many talk of women violence against women, but there are some men that are being violated as well. What programs are there also programs in place for this particular individuals?
I know there's a letter in one of the dailies yesterday,
right,
asking there should be a men's crisis. We have had to put up with that question for 30 years, for nearly 30 years. We will ask them. But my response to that is, women are violated because of, it's a political thing. It's about patriarchy, a male-dominated society where women are kept in domestic violence situations in a cycle. There's a cycle of abuse and for long-term violence. It is women, you look at the statistics, it is women who are sexually abused, and often by men, most of the time, 99.999%.
Right.
Children are abused, assaulted by men, girls, boys, and women. And so therefore, that is why there is a need to talk so much about it, because we'll be looking at the impact later on, how bad it is.
Yeah.
Yes, there are women. We are human beings. We are not saints, right?
Yes.
But men do not have the right to hit women, whether we talk back or whatever our behavior. We as human beings, we can talk and we can dialogue. But there are men, where women dominate a relationship. But then why does it hurt our eyes when a woman is dominating a relationship, and it doesn't hurt our eyes when a man is,
That's true.
There should be equality in relationships. Women have hit men, women have killed men, but often as a one-off and often in self-defense, and things like that. So that is why. But men do need counseling. They are emotionally disturbed sometimes, and men do ring us up. Look, my wife is yelling in the background. What do I do? Some very good men who do not want to end up in violence.
Exactly. Well, we'll be talking to Miss Ali a little bit more. But for now, we're heading into a break. And if you have calls, do call us up, 3220-906 or 907. Welcome back to Speak Your Mind in our final and fifth segment for today. Now, Miss Ali, once again talking on the violence against women, but yes, also men. What other programs, like I said, some of them would like to know where they can go. And yes, every time it's always about women, like they like to say. But there are some out there who are also wondering where they can go in regards to violence against them.
Okay. Of course, they can call us up. We are a women's center. And so men have to make appointments to come in, because if a woman has been abused and she enters a building, she doesn't see a whole lot of men in there. And as we have to take, we have 2 male employees at the center, but they're more in administration rather than in the counseling section. But we have boys who have been abused by men, adult men. We have teenage boys who have been abused by adult men that we have looked after. In my 30 years of experience, I haven't yet had a man who said his wife bashes him up, or a woman has raped him and he is traumatized, or his wife bashes him up every day in the way that women come, the violence that they suffer. I haven't seen it yet. But men have called up and talked about some emotional abuse and so on. And if they call up, we're on a 24-hour line. We will respond to them. Men come for legal information. We are able to give it to them. Men who are disturbed because of their sexuality and things like that, we will attend to them. Men from the gay community, we'll also attend to them when they come, women and men. So when they come to us, we will not send them away. Men with disabilities have come to the crisis center because they have been sexually abused or emotionally abused and so on. So we will not turn them away. We will. But we will attend to them. But, I really know that I understand, and I'm encouraging people to have a counseling center for men because of other things that they go through. A lot of stress, financial stress, because they're supposed to be the breadwinners and so on. So it's about the re-education. If men lost that whole thing about I have to be a man, that kind of masculinity, life will be a lot more easier for them. It's because they have to keep up appearances as a man. That is why the stress is greater for them, and they definitely need to talk about it. So, once you demystify that whole masculinity get into more positive masculinity, then things will be a lot more better. And then they also don't feel threatened by women. They don't have to do this, exercise this abusive behavior towards women.
Exactly. Ms. Ali, the cost of violence. Okay, this is a huge cost, especially it's part of, especially on the nation. Productivity-wise, what are the impact of the cost of violence in a community or in a country?
Well, let's start from the family. A woman who is regularly in this abusive situation, emotional abuse, physical abuse, often sexual abuse by the intimate partner, so she cannot tend to her family. She cannot do the work that women normally do in the house, outside, inside, looking after. So the children will also suffer. Her health suffers. 15% of women said that they get beaten up during pregnancy. So all the reproductive health issues that come with it, miscarriages and so on. Then we have the issue of if the man is philandering here and there, and she cannot negotiate safe sex, particularly in abusive families. So she's at high risk of HIV, AIDS, STIs, and that's a medical cost there. Broken ribs, broken teeth, broken jaws, cementing and all this, the putting plaster on and so, all those medical costs we have to take into account. Children's homes, women's shelters, organizations like us, we our budget is $1 million a year to attend to everything, both here in the Pacific. That kind of money can be put to better use if we did not have that. So that children like this start playing truant from school. So that has got education impacts. This child will not complete the education, drop out of school, get out on the streets. That has got implications for employment, non-employment. The state takes on that. Then also they get into criminal behavior. So it has got an impact on law and order. So all those things happening. And then women who are in the workforce, who are in paid employment, if they don't attend absenteeism, the employers suffer because she's got a black eye, broken rib, she's going to the doctor because of what has happened to her. Women who are raped, they go through all this also. They don't want to go back to school. They don't want to go back to work. They're trying to get their lives together again. So that kind of productivity. The police courts, the legal courts, the Legal Aid Commission, drafting new legislation, the money for that, and then implementing that legislation, the training of the officers. So if you put all these things together, in 2002, the then Reserve Bank Governor Savanathan Narumbe and his team, in cooperation with us and the Ministry for Women, using a particular formula, came up with a figure of $300 to $500 million a year.
Wow.
That the cost, if you put it in dollar costs, the human cost as well as all the other, the lack of productivity, all those kind of things. So that's what and I think recently Professor Bhiman Prasad from USP has said, no, it's a lot more than that now. That's about 10 years down the line. It's a lot more. It's more in the vicinity of 700 million and up a year. And that's about 7% of our GDP and things like that. So you can see that it has got ripple effect. A lot of our social problems come because of the violence that women suffer. Pregnancies, unwanted pregnancies, teenage pregnancies, girls getting impregnated by relatives, by people they know. And then we say, we have a problem with teenage pregnancy.
Exactly.
How are they getting pregnant? So those are the questions that we need to ask. So it's not good all around. And we have to address it in a very realistic manner.
That's so true. Well, the launch at 10 o'clock this morning. And for those, is it open to the public or is it just...
Well, look, if people come in, we're not going to... if you're interested, you have an interest in it, please come along to the Southern Cross.
Okay. Well, before we end our segment, anything else you'd like to share about the survey? It looks really thick there, so I'm sure.
It's about 310 pages. This is what it looks like.
Wow.
Yeah, this is where it is. And it's very well written, very readable. So particularly those of you who are students, copies are available in the library. If you belong to an organization where you want to keep a copy at the library, please come and get one. And can I just put a plug in for the march tomorrow? Because it's the end of the 16 days of activism, but it is not an end to the work that we do.
No, it's not.
All of us, it's all our responsibility. It's not just the crisis center. All of us can stop this horrible disease that is totally preventable if we all put our mind to it. So tomorrow is the World Human Rights March. Starts from the flea market. We have a permit. Please come along.
You just had to elaborate that.
But also, if you cannot make it there, there's a human rights exhibition. Various human rights organizations that belong to the NGO Coalition for Human Rights will have a human rights exhibition at the lower auditorium of the Civic Center. There are beautiful T-shirts available for $10, videos, all kinds of things that we will be showing there. So please make it. Human rights is all our responsibilities to have our own human rights and also take responsibility for other people. So I'll see you there tomorrow.
Thank you, Miss Ali. And on that note, that is Speak Your Mind for today. Until next week, have a pleasant evening.